Segment addition is basically when a large segment is broken into smaller segments. And the idea is that if I add up the smaller stuff, it adds up to the big thing that's created, okay? So the smaller segments add up to the larger segment that they form. And so when I look at this, like if I have AC as the whole segment, but notice it's broken down into pieces, A, B, and BC. And so all this segment addition stuff is just saying, hey, if I take AB and I add BC, if I add those two smaller pieces together, it gives me the whole thing, AC. Okay, that's it. All right, that's segment addition. The idea that this could be broken down into pieces, and if I add up the pieces, it gives me the whole thing. Okay. For example, if I look at something like this guy, it says find EG. Notice EG is broken down into pieces. I have EF and I have FG. So those two pieces should add up to the whole thing. So that means that EG should be the 24 plus the 9. If I do 24 plus the 9, I get a 33. So I would say that EG equals 33. Okay? The smaller pieces add up to the whole thing. Okay? If I look at something like this guy, this one's a little bit tricky this time. This time I want to find EG. Well, EG is one of the pieces, right? I would look at this and I would say, hey, I'm missing this piece. Maybe I'll call it X if you're really into algebra, right? So I would say, hey, those two pieces should add up to the whole thing. So 16 plus X should equal the whole thing. Well, the whole thing is 78. And now think about how you would solve this from algebra. You would subtract 16 from each side and get X equals a 62. You could also just look at it and say, okay, 16 plus what will equal to 78? You might be able to look at this and say, hey, if the whole thing from here to here is 78, well, I just have to subtract that piece to get the other piece. So maybe you can look at this pretty quickly, and you don't have to set up an equation of any kind. You would just come down here and go, oh, 78 minus 16 is 62. Okay, so either way, e.g., 62. Okay, and if there was labels on this, if that was 16 inches, I would say it's 62 inches or centimeters or whatever. Okay. If we look at this one, you're using 16-inch bricks to line a garden. If the garden is 11 feet long, what size does the last brick need to be? Okay, because it might not be a full 16-inch brick. We might have to cut it with a concrete saw or something like that. Okay, and so when we're looking at this thing, I want to figure out how big does that last brick need to be. And so there's a couple ways to kind of think about this. First of all, notice I have inches and I have feet. So let's talk about this garden from the perspective of inches instead. So right now I have it as 11 feet. Well, let's think about that in terms of inches. Grab your calculator. 11 times 12. So let's see, that's 132 inches. So right now I'm talking about 132 inches. That's for the whole thing. That's for the entire length of the garden. Okay? And so if I start dropping bricks into this thing, each brick is 16 inches long. So I'm just adding up 16 inches and 16 inches and seeing what happens for me to get to the 132. And we did the same thing before when we were converting between inches and feet and that kind of stuff. Let's use some division. Let's see how many 16s we can get here. So let's take the 132 divided by 16. And notice it gives me 8.25. Again, ignore the 0.25. The 8 is telling me how many full bricks, okay? And so I need 8 full bricks here. And let's see how far 8 full bricks is going to take me. See, it's going to come up a little bit short, but that's okay. So 8 full bricks, 8 times 16. So 8 full bricks is going to take me 128 inches. So I can write that down here. So 128 inches. Okay. So if I lay out as many bricks as I can, gets me to about here somewhere at 128 inches. So think about how many inches are left. Again, this is just segment addition. Each of the bricks represents a segment, and we're adding up a bunch of those 16-inch segments. Okay. And then the entire length of the garden represents a segment. Okay. And so the small piece that I'm missing also represents a segment, and that's what I'm looking for. So the small piece that I'm missing from 128 to 132, that's going to be 4 inches. So I need a 4-inch brick. Okay? So I'm going to have to cut one of those last bricks down. Okay? And you could have kept going. You could have kept drawing the 16s in here. and adding up 16 until you got as close as you could to the 32. Because eventually what'll happen is you'll draw a brick right here with a 16, and you'll have a total of 128 when you get to this point. And you'll say, okay, that's where I stop. I can't use a full brick for the next one. I need a smaller one at 4 inches. Okay?